Morning Cooks, and today we're going to talk about copper and copper metabolism in the body, and also discuss aspects of copper metabolism in regards to pregnancy and lactation. And all the information that I'm going to discuss today can be found in my nutrition reference manual for pregnancy and lactation called Nourishing Generations, which you can find on Amazon. Check the link below, or my website also. I'll try to put it on my link below. And subscribe to this channel. The first thing I'm going to do is take the persimmons and get the seeds out and put them in my blender, skin included. Skins, unless they're actually bitter, skins are a great way to add nutrients to your food.
Hey Mom, you're so funny.
A lot of times there's a higher concentration of nutrients in the skin, and typically phytochemicals tend to be concentrated in the skin. And these persimmons are super ripe, which is good because that means they have a higher sugar content. They're almost to the stage where they would not be super yummy. But I love that because that's gonna get cooked down. And we're using persimmons today for copper, even though copper tends to be highest in animal sources, animal foods, fish, shellfish especially. No, copper is actually really low in chicken. Copper is actually low in chicken and low in cow's milk. So if that's your primary diet, chicken and cow's milk, you might be deficient. You should look around. Copper tends to be high in seeds and nuts. Like cashews are a wonderful source of copper, as well as other seeds, sesame seeds as well. Tahini is a great source of copper. In fact, all my favorite foods are good sources of copper. Garbanzo beans, mushrooms. Oh, salmon, yes. Josh said salmon is high in copper. That is true. Oysters are high in copper, but persimmons are surprisingly very high in copper, which is not common for fruits and vegetables to be high in copper. So I decided to focus on that, and we are making a wonderful little, kind of like a preserve, but I have my little cheat ways to do it so that I don't have to spend all day cooking fruits down, and I like to use a little bit of flour to thicken it up at the end. And generally, when you make fruit preserves, it gets thick because of the sugar and pectin, and then just by the fact of cooking it for a really long time. One downside to cooking for long periods of time is you lose vitamin C content, as well as some B vitamins. You know, the water-soluble vitamins tend to be heat sensitive. Whereas minerals like copper, that's not a concern here. I'm just gonna get all these out. We can do this real quick. Copper is generally in most foods. So most people are not at risk for deficiency. Now there are some populations that can be at risk for deficiencies. And one of this is most women are taking birth control, the pill kind of birth control, hormonal birth control. Hormonal birth control can cause elevations in your bloodstream of copper while you actually have a copper deficiency. So if you are on hormonal birth control, that's something to be aware of, and either include extra copper foods or realize if you are having blood tests with your doctor and taking a more scientific approach, medical approach, to realize that your copper levels might look normal, but they could be low. And this can have various effects in the body. One striking effect is in regards to anemia, because copper plays a role in iron metabolism and how iron is absorbed in the body, how iron is absorbed in the intestine, how iron is stored and excreted in the liver, and how it's released from the liver. Copper plays roles in these areas. So if you have a deficiency in copper, this can interfere with it. And if you are deficient in copper for reasons such as having a bad diet or taking hormonal birth control, you could have iron deficiency anemia, and your doctor would prescribe iron, but really iron wouldn't be the problem. You could be consuming enough iron, you could be deficient in copper. And so this is why it's really important, I think, that nutrition is not paid enough attention to in the medical field, because doctors can end up prescribing, supplements such as copper, causing increased oxidative stress because they usually prescribe ferrous copper. I can peel these little seeds off. And ferrous copper can cause increased oxidative stress rather than ferric copper. So a lot of vitamins, it's not a big deal if you took too much of the vitamin. Here that's an issue because it could cause increased oxidative stress, and if you don't need it because the actual cause of your iron deficiency is a copper deficiency, then you're basically stressing the body out and not helping your body, because you still need that copper in your body to regulate that. So we want to avoid causes of iron deficiency anemia, and there's also other causes of anemia as well. Riboflavin deficiency, B12, folate deficiency. All these things can contribute to poor red blood cell formation, and usually it's attributed to iron deficiency, but it's not always. Copper determinations were, the EAR for copper was determined by several factors. One concern regarding that is that they used patients who were on IV feeding tubes. And these patients who were using feeding tubes and were not consuming food, they were ill. And so they partially used that data from ill people to make the copper recommendations. We're going to put this on the stove and let it cook down. They also used data from men to determine the copper recommendations, both for regular women and also for women who are pregnant and lactating with a 15% coefficient based on the mean and standard deviation. And then for fetuses and infants, they used a small study of around 10 infants where they measured excretion of copper over 2 days, measuring their PP and their poo-poo and their meconium. And for this, over 2 days in 10 babies, they determined the needs for babies and fetuses. It's a very large, small sample size, and it's not based on the metabolism of women, and particularly pregnant and lactating women. And I can't conjecture to what the actual copper needs are, but I do like you to be aware of the recommendations are based on this data. And when they were doing this, they did use more robust scientific methods for determining the copper concentration. Like copper plays a role in erythrocyte superoxide dismutase. Erythrocyte superoxide dismutase is an important antioxidant. It's in the blood. It can be measured. And then serum ceruloplasmin levels, which is another, also uses copper. And I'm going to add in some sugar. You can add in as much as you want. You can also do honey, but when you use sugar, it creates a better reaction. Okay, if you use honey, it doesn't create the same reaction by reacting with the pectin and the sugar. I have a very small amount of sugar. This is also unrefined dark sugar. This is like Demora sugar. It's even more, it's Moscato sugar. It's all blended up. It's lovely, actually. And this sugar is high in iron. Remember that copper helps with the iron absorption.
Not the wire copper. Okay, not the wire copper, but copper ions.
In this recipe, I used about 1/4 cup of sugar. You can use far more. If your family is just getting used to eating healthy, add 1/2 cup of sugar. It's still going to be very healthy and very nutritious to eat real foods without preservatives. And meanwhile, I'm going to get some of this lovely ginger I have and peel it. It's a good thing that copper is universally distributed in food because it plays such diverse roles in the body. One role of copper is involved in the discussed superoxide dismutase, and it acts as an antioxidant. It plays a role in superoxide dismutase, which is one of the most important antioxidants in the body. And without copper, you can have excess oxidative stress. This becomes particularly important in pregnancy and lactation because excess oxidative stress can lead to conditions like preeclampsia, poor pregnancy prognosis, poor birth outcomes. A lot of these are due to oxidative stress. And really, oxidative stress can come about by pretty much being deficient in almost any nutrient. But copper directly plays a role in antioxidant status in the body. Now, it's important that copper intake is not too high, because if copper intake is too high, and this would occur in an unnatural situation, right? Not from eating foods. Maybe if you were only eating foods out of copper vessels or copper cooking thing, cups, and it was leaching, disintegrating into your food, or you had water stored in a copper bin and too much of the copper was going Now, copper is supposed to be great for the immune system, and it is important for immune regulation, but it is important in terms of antioxidant status, but you can't have too high copper because too high copper can lead to the formation of hydroxyl radicals. Oh my goodness! Papa, 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 we need to start this. Oh, it's popping.
Anyways,
We're going to cook this on low heat for about 15 to 20 minutes, depending on your flame. And I want to leave it uncovered because I want it to evaporate the liquid, but I also don't want it to splatter everywhere, but that's just going to happen, so we'll have to clean up later. This recipe is very tasty. If you have kids, they are going to love this. And we're going to cook some crepes. And also, speaking of the crepes, let's go ahead. They're not really crepes, they're my special gluten-free wraps. They're based off a crepe recipe, and the idea behind them is a crepe-ish, but they actually come out much thicker, kind of like somewhere between a pancake or a thick tortilla. More of a wrap. They're more like a pita bread thickness. For the wraps, I'm going to show you how to heat up the pan and prevent a stainless steel pan. We're going to prevent our stainless steel pan from sticking. We're first going to heat up oil to just about smoking point, and then we're going to let it cool down while we prepare the rest of the recipe. And then you just let your tiny bit of oil
Pan, and I'm going to melt that.
smoke here. And when we get it to smoking, we're going to turn it off and let it cool down a little bit for about 10, 15, 30 minutes. Oftentimes when I'm planning this recipe, I do this step way earlier, and then later on I'll cook my crepes. Like, as soon as I wake up, if I'm sure and I brush my teeth, make my coffee, and then I'll make my wraps. And that prevents stainless steel from sticking. Copper plays many other roles in the body. It particularly plays a role in the nervous system formation and neurotransmitter synthesis and regulation. It plays a role in estrogen synthesis and adrenaline synthesis and use in the body, and it also plays a role in breaking down dopamine. Monoamine oxidase, which is an enzyme that breaks down dopamine, utilizes copper. So if you don't have enough copper, you can have difficulties in your dopamine pathways, and this will lead to things like difficulties in attention, concentration, mood, regulation, hormonal issues. I think really the majority of issues in the body can be ameliorated by increasing your nutrition. And when you increase your nutrition, then you have a higher functioning body. And for whatever reason, oh, perfect. See, I got mine smoking. Something popped on there. And then I'm just going to let that cool down a little bit. And some people, everyone's metabolism is different. Some people are going to need more copper, and some people are going to need less. And you have to remember that the copper is an AI, so it's adequate intake, and it is based essentially on the minimum amount needed in the bloodstream to maintain your erythrocyte superoxide dismutase (SOD) concentration, and some other factors. And it's not based on optimal functioning. Unfortunately, even though we can do all kinds of wonderful things with computers and technology, we're still lacking a lot of methods in the ways of biological measurements. So this is why it's important when you are having difficulty in an area in functioning or metabolism or hormonal, that you look to your nutrients. And with pregnancy and lactation, it's imperative to make sure that you have enough nutrients pre-pregnancy. And if you've been on hormonal birth control, it's really important to focus on high copper foods because you want to supplement copper and make sure that your copper levels, and you're not on birth control, that you're not measuring your copper levels. And these can affect you, like you can have a baby year after that's 6 months old, and that 6 month old baby will be affected by your copper status 6 months before pregnancy. And this is why it's really important, and I advocate for getting off hormonal birth controls and just using either family planning method, which is absolutely functional, or barrier method, or using herbs. And because the baby is affected way down the road. And unfortunately this happens when a woman doesn't gain enough weight, or she's on fat, things like this, or she does not healing properly. We could take another example. Zinc interferes with copper absorption. So if you're, especially zinc supplement form, so if you're taking a zinc supplement, say you're just having illnesses, or you're not feeling good, and you say, hey, I need to take a zinc supplement, you could just have an issue with the levels of copper in your body and copper absorption. And your copper absorption, even if you're eating tons of garbanzo beans and oyster mushrooms and shiitake mushrooms, you could not, I'm going to put in extra ginger, because, is that okay, Boo Bear? I think you'll like it. I have about 2 pounds of Persimmons, sorry, Spanish name. I was like, what is the name in English? What's the name in English? I thought of 2 language names before I came up with English. Okay. That grated ginger stirred in there. I like to put in ginger as much as possible. It's wonderful for decreasing inflammation in your body. But back to copper, if you were taking, for example, a zinc sulfate supplement. Zinc sulfate is just a form of zinc, it's easily absorbed, so that's normally what's used by doctors in the case of the zinc supplements. And just generally over-the-counter zinc supplements will be made of zinc sulfate. So you could be taking that, and then if you're taking that at the same time as you're eating your copper-containing food, your shiitake mushrooms, or it's still in your stomach, you could potentially not be absorbing enough copper. So your copper status for your baby way down the road could be low, and this could affect all kinds of aspects of fetal development, the body's development. And one reason, for example, say you had a C-section and you were following my guidelines for taking a zinc sulfate supplement to help with wound healing, or just you were taking a zinc supplement to help with wound healing after childbirth, but you were just doing the supplement part and you weren't eating the foods and the manual that I have in my next book, After Nourishing Generations, is Staying Fed. It is a cooking manual for pregnancy and lactation. So say, for example, you had this manual and you were going through the chapter on nutritional needs per trimester, and you're reading the 4th trimester section, and you said, hey, look, I see here she's recommending 220 milligrams of zinc as a supplement for the first 6 weeks after childbirth. And you were following that, and plus the other recommendations for the specific proteins and amino acids I'm recommending there. But you weren't following my manual, and you were drinking a Coke in a day and eating some fast food, or generally just not eating enough of the copper containing foods because you were used to eating a diet that does not have a lot of copper in it, such as chicken and dairy. Say you're just eating a lot of pizza in the evenings because that's easy, even if it's a healthy whole grain pizza made with organic dairy, and you're eating a lot of chicken regularly. These are low copper foods. Well, if these are the basis of your diet and you're taking a zinc supplement to heal, well, yes, you're doing the right thing to heal, but you also have to make sure that the food that you're consuming is high enough in a nutrient so you don't have that deficiency, even if it's a subclinical deficiency and is not immediately manifested. Yes, Boo Bear. Thank you for raising your hand. Oh, Flash says I'm not saying you can't eat fast food, but I'm actually saying that you cannot eat fast food, especially during pregnancy and lactation, because you have such a high nutrient need with limited caloric needs. Yes, you need higher calories, but if you need 200% of a additional nutrient, like 200% double the amount of iron as normal, or 50% more riboflavin than normal, but you're only getting 20% more calories, or 25% more calories, or 10% more calories, or 0 more calories like the first trimester, you don't have room for a high calorie, high fat, low micronutrients are the vitamins and minerals, foods. And these are the traditional sort of American foods. And that's why it's so important that if you are using supplements, you can't see the supplements as a substitution for you to be able to get away with eating foods. The supplements are additional because it can be so difficult to get all your nutrients that you need. And I have this beautiful fig liqueur, and last time I made this, I didn't add the fig liqueur. It has very little alcohol, but it's just sweet, and it's got this fig flavor, and I love to put something like that, like an orange liqueur, fig liqueur, vanilla, in a preserve like this. It really brings out the flavor and melts it together, and the alcohol completely cooks out. I just picked this up at the farmer's market because I thought that looks yummy. Interesting. And about like 2 big tablespoons there. I'm gonna stir that. I have sufficiently ruined all of my and I'm leaving the top covered but cracked so I can raise some moisture without getting splatters everywhere. That's beautiful. If you are eating the wrong foods, you're not getting enough copper. Another way that you have inhibition of copper absorption or copper utilization by the body is a high fructose diet. And I don't mean high fructose as in high in levels of fructose, I mean high fructose containing foods, which are sodas, candies, any type of ice cream you buy at a store, even a lot of times in the grocery store. You must learn to check your ingredients and read your ingredients. You also want to avoid colorante audio. And high fructose can exacerbate a copper deficiency. So for example, if you were, imagine a situation where you just had a copper deficiency from a high fast food diet, eating processed foods that are not high in copper. If you had a high fast food diet, which is low in copper, a lot of processed foods, they don't have enough copper, and you're consuming a high fructose corn syrup diet, you can exacerbate a copper deficiency. Or say you're on birth control and you're otherwise healthy, but you have 2 sodas a day, 2 Cokes a day, or 1 Coke a day. And I just don't know the absolute levels because this is not scientifically tested, but it is known that, as I can't determine each specific metabolic state, but high fructose can exacerbate a copper deficiency. So you want to avoid the high fructose foods, especially pregnancy and lactation. Ow, poppers! Okay, now this is cooled down, and generally once it's cooled down, it's still warm, but I can touch it without burning myself. So about that. Copper plays a myriad of roles in the body in regards to metabolism because of its unique. This batter is a combination of garbanzo flour, rice flour. I have 6 eggs and 2 cups of flour and 2 cups of milk. I didn't use milk, I used a milk substitute. I like to blend up a 4th cup of sunflower seeds, but you can also use milk. If you do use milk, you look for an A2 casein form or goat's milk. So actually, I think on this one, particularly one, I actually did use some local grass-fed milk. I'm just going to show you this. Let's put this in here. Copper is used in the electron transport chain. It's used in a lot of oxidative reactions, lysyl oxidase, ceroplasmulin oxidase, beta hydroxylase. You notice all these enzymes have ACE. Remember, copper is very important in neurotransmitter function and synthesis. It is part of monoamine oxidase, responsible for breaking down not only dopamine but also norepinephrine and epinephrine. And acetylcholine play a huge role in mood and regulation, and also feeding and eating, focus, concentration, feeling good. So you want to have enough of the proper nutrients. Remember, this recipe is 2 cups flour, 6 eggs, 2 cups milk, half a teaspoon of baking soda, and half a teaspoon of sea salt. Oh, and 2 tablespoons of flaxseed. You can use milk or you can use the combination of water and blend it up. Sunflower seeds in the ratio of like 1/4 cup, 1/3 cup. Sunflower seeds for 1 to 2 cups of water. It works really excellent. And in infants, if the infant takes an iron supplement, that can interfere with copper absorption. Worst case scenario, if the infant's been given cow's milk and taken as an iron supplement, maybe they're being treated in different ways, but they're not treated properly, it can cause a copper deficiency, and this can cause huge problems, such as, for example, problems with collagen formation. Now, the next step the last step, after we've reduced this about 1/3 of the way, I'm gonna put a little bit of this, I'm gonna dissolve my flour and a little bit of this liqueur. You could also dissolve it in water. And I'm gonna mix that up, get that dissolved, and get all the lumps out. It's very important when you're adding flours. I actually like to use 1.5 tablespoons of tapioca flour to thicken this recipe up. And that works perfectly for a kilo of preserves. I don't have tapioca flour, and I thought, my goodness, we're gonna have to go to the store and kind of flip the crepe. My little wrap, when it gets bubbly, that's when you want to flip it.
When your wrap is all bubbly like this, that's when it's ready to flip. The second side is just moments.
There, beautiful. And I thought, you know what, would I do that? If I, ow. I'm just holding this as a shield. Make a great warrior Xena princess. I thought, would I do that if I was just cooking? What would I do? No, of course not. I would use one of my many other flours. And so that's what I'm doing with you today, because I am not focused on making the perfect recipe for you. I'm focused on showing you how to cook in quick and easy ways and to nourish your body. This channel is about nourishing your body with food that actually is far better than anything I get in a restaurant. And I think a lot of times more creative. And so if I made a falafel bowl with the lentils and brown rice and the tahini dressing, my tahini dressing would have a lot more garlic and lemon and be more spreadable and smooth around, like what I got in the restaurant last night, which was so full of salt. And I wondered, it started giving me a headache, and I thought, my gosh, are they using, what kind of tahini are they using? Some sort of chemical tahini. So I just, now that I mix the flour in with the, oh goodness, real cooking show, this needs to go. There, get the flour into our mixture. It's not necessary to use the flour, but I like to have a little bit thicker preserve so that it doesn't make my wraps soggy. So I actually get more preserve. That's a good way. It's a good way to get more preserve.
Once you have completely destroyed your stove and it's reduced, you say not quite by half, but by about a third, then you add in that flour and then turn it back on for about 4 minutes and let that continue to cook. In this recipe, I used about 1/4 cup of sugar. You can use far more. If your family is just getting used to eating healthy, add 1/2 cup of sugar. It's still going to be very healthy and very nutritious to eat real foods without preservatives. And something like this, it appears that it takes a long time. It's actually a very easy recipe. And what I normally do is
Hey sweetheart, I can hear your Star Wars playing in the background, okay? Remember, Mama's making a video, it's just a short time. So I really want to whisk this into my mixture.
What I normally do is I make the preserves when I just have a spare moment.
Something like this, it appears that it takes a long time. Actually, a very easy recipe. And it's 5 minutes. I blend it up, put it in the pan, let it cook, then come back a little while later and do the rest. And then I make the crepe batter a different day or a different time. And then I just make as many as I need for that one setting. Sometimes I also like to make a whole batch of these when I don't want to be in the kitchen all day cooking for my son, who eats so much, so voracious, such a voracious eater. I love it. I will make 4, 5, 6 the night before or the morning of. And then I'm like, it's on you. Just put the whole stack out. And I don't have to do lunch. I don't have to cook it into dinner because I made a bunch of food. I set it out and then they can get it. And he has learned even at 5 years old to come and he can spread the cheese on it. He can spread some salsa on it. He can put some avocado in it. He can stuff these with avocado. If you've just placed out the cut up avocado or placed out a nut butter. Another fun recipe, which you can find in the next video that's high in copper. We're going to stuff some dates with some tahini, and that is going to be delicious, and we'll continue talking about the needs of copper metabolism. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Check out, I'm going to put this on here and then serve it with some wonderful brie. I have some beautiful brie cheeses from the farmer's market from grass-fed cows. But if you have health problems, it's one of the foods you should cut out and eliminate. And I do not promote much dairy consumption. If you're pregnant, you can get away with more dairy consumption. If you're lactating, less so, and then you should leave the dairy consumption to at least past the 4th trimester. Wait at least 3 months, the first 3 months, before you do start consuming dairy again. And then you should have the fermented dairy. This looks nice and thick. It's almost starting to stick. And that means, my lovelies, that we are going to take it off the stove, and I'm going to store this in jars in the refrigerator. And I have the effort here, but I'm going to get from this 2 pounds, almost 3 quarts of Persimmon preserves, which are high in copper. And to learn more about copper metabolism, check out the next video where we're making stuffed dates with tahini melted in chocolate. Just can't. This recipe is so easy and executed so quickly, I don't have time to talk about all the aspects and uses of copper. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to subscribe, and support me for free. Thank you. Oh yeah, and that flash wants you to know that if you put copper wires into your garden, you can help your plants grow, or you can also use copper with your lightsaber and help your crystal magnetize the lightsaber and create a force, right? Copper, because copper conducts electricity, so we use copper to make a lightsaber, which we connected to our crystal chamber, which we made out of PVC. You have to use your imagination a little bit, but that was a lot of fun, and he just wanted to share that with you. This button with the red dot on it, so that's off. Because when you talk to Mama, I lose my brain waves, and I love to have your input, but right now, when you talk to me, I lose what I'm thinking about, because I'm totally focused on Gabrielle, yeah? And I want to hear all of what he has to say. So how about at the end of the video, we'll have a special part, and you can write notes in your paper. You can draw a little picture of what you want to say, and at the end of the video, you can tell me, and we'll do that, okay? So let's do this, and then later today, I'll take you to eat some sushi, okay? And then after the video, I'll take you outside to play. How about that? Sound good? Yeah? Sound good?